So today I wanted to go over my Meren deck. It's currently my favorite and my main commander deck. It's actually quite powerful and not that expensive considering all things. It can kind of get out of hand sometimes, especially once you control the board. It's pretty hard to lose momentum and to not control the board. Once you start getting all your creatures that sacrifice other opponents' creatures will pretty much prevent um, your opponents from doing anything against you, and you will become a target, but hopefully by then you should be able to handle all things. In addition, you have a bunch of removal spells, specifically enchantment and artifact removal, so you should be able to hold up pretty decently against any deck. It's a pretty well-rounded deck. I'd say the best way to lose with Meren is probably if somebody exiles your graveyard where you have a bunch of cards in there. So it's pretty important to make sure that you can keep your graveyard as protected as much as possible. For instance, if you think that somebody's about to exile your graveyard, you should be able to find a way to bring all your creatures out before they get exiled. And if not, it's pretty hard to win against it. But it's pretty well rounded in that case, and it's still able to win most games even with a large portion of your deck exiled. But that's fine. So Meren's ability is kind of fantastic because when you gain an experience counter, you gain the experience counter. So even if Meren dies and you're at 3 experience counters, you keep the 3 experience counters. So if Meren is to come back, you are still at 3 experience counters and can continue to go up. So once you have experience counters, it's there forever. And in addition, if you can proliferate those experience counters, they can also go up. So this is a very fantastic ability, and it's super powerful. So Meren is essential in this deck that you get her out as soon as possible, and you start sacrificing creatures to get your experience counters up. With that being said, Lightning Greaves is a good protection. It does a great job. I mean, zero. I mean, you're never really gonna target Meren with this deck, at least. Lightning Greaves is perfect. I mean, it doesn't give her indestructible, but at least there's multiple opportunities to bring her back. And by the time that somebody has an answer for Meren, you should be able to have enough mana to bring her back a second time. And trust me, it's essential that she's out on the board. So for mana ramp, we have Arcane Signet, obviously a commander staple. So this is obviously in there. On top of that, we have Soul Ring, another staple, obviously. Talisman of Resilience. So in my opinion, I like talismans better than signets because they, allow you to immediately choose one or the other color. Whereas with signets, if you play a signet and you tap out, you can't use the mana. That's fine here because we also have Golgari's Signet, which is decent. I could cut this card out for something else, but it still works decently fine. So yeah, I have a proxy. I'm sorry, I'm a college student. I'm not gonna cash out a lot of money right now. Meat Hook Massacre, it's pretty much the only Wrath. I mean, technically there are other Wrath cards, but this is strictly for Wrath, and you know, these two abilities right here synergize really well with the deck because you will be sacrificing a lot of creatures, and in addition, opponents will also be sacking creatures because of your creatures, which we'll get into later. So this is a very good card, and I obviously will buy it in the future. So we have card draw. It's essential to keep a good hand at all times, and Night's Whisper is a decently good card advantage card. 2 life is arbitrary. A life is a resource in commander, so you should be very willing to use this card. And there is at least 1 life gain card in here that works decently well, 2 actually, but we'll get into that later. So this is a really good card and my favorite art as well. Grim Haruspex. I never thought this card was that good until I started playing it more often, and wow, it's really good. So whenever another non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. You are going to be sacrificing a lot of non-token creatures in this deck. So you will be drawing a lot of cards with this card. So you want to have this creature out as much as possible, to be honest. You don't really want to be sacking this creature. There are a few creatures that you want to keep on the board at all times because they synergize so well with creatures that are being sacked. And all the creatures that are being sacked are should be out early. So you should be able to play them really early, and then you can sack them and bring them back very often while you keep these creatures on the board. So this is a fantastic card for card draw. Sign in Blood, another great card draw. Obviously, 2 life, that's fine. Read the Bones, another one. You get to scry and then draw 2, you lose 2, that's fine. It's just card draw. So now we're going for the tutor cards. And luckily Black has the best tutor cards in the format. So so we're using a lot of them. And we're going to use a lot of tutor cards that you tutor into your graveyard. And that's because, well, we have a bunch of reanimation effects. So, such as Unmarked Grave, decent tutor card, because you can search your library for a non-legendary card and put it into the graveyard. So this is anything. If you have Eternal Witness in your hand, you're going to be able to bring back almost any type of card that you put into your graveyard with this card. So it's very decent. I've played it a few times and it's really good. So Entomb, another fantastic, honestly probably the best graveyard tutor to graveyard card, because it's any card and it's only 1 black mana. It's a fantastic card. So we're running this. Buried Alive, in certain graveyard decks like Trazen, this is a win condition because you can combo off with it. But searching your library for 3 creature cards and putting them into my graveyard is fantastic, because if I'm in a situation where I'm struggling to deal with my opponent's board state, but I have Meren out and I have an ability to bring some creatures back, I will tutor certain cards into the graveyard, so by my end step I will be able to bring it back and hopefully handle or deal with my opponent. So this is a very good card, and it's very, very flexible. You're going to be looking for 3 creature cards that will do a lot of things. And since this is a really creature heavy deck, you should have an answer for almost anything. Diabolic Intent. So it's a double whammy because you're going to be sacrificing a creature so you can tutor. So this is essentially a Diabolic Tutor plus you sacrifice a creature, which is good because you synergize. You synergize with sacrificing things. You shouldn't really Diabolic Tutor or just generally tutor it really early on. Sometimes you should. I mean, if Mana Ramp is really struggling and you need a Soul Ring, it's fine to tutor into that. But generally, by the time that you are going to tutor for something that you need, you should be able to sacrifice any creature that you want. So this is a really good tutor card. In addition, we have Worldly Tutor. Just a good tutor for creature card. I mean, it's decent. It's just good. Diabolic Tutor, of course, in my opinion, the best tutor card in Magic. Just very good. So with that, we are going to have a lot of cards that we are going to be putting into our graveyard and will end up in the graveyard. Obviously, mostly creatures, but we have other things. So if somebody destroys an enchantment or an artifact that we would like to bring back, card like Timeless Witness will do the trick. And Timeless Witness isn't the best bring back from graveyard card. Obviously, Eternal Witness is as a creature. And so we are also running Eternal Witness, obviously a very, very, very good creature. And with Meren, you will end up sacrificing this creature because once it does the ETB, it's pretty much done its job. And so you are going to sacrifice it, bring it back, and then bring something back from your graveyard. So this is a really, really good card. On top of that, we have Victimize, really good card, because synergizes with the deck while you choose 2 creature cards in your graveyard. Sacrifice a creature. If you do, return the chosen cards to the battlefield tapped. Really, really good. If you can choose 2 really great ETB cards, and then sacrifice a card that synergizes really well, it's dying, then this is a really, really good card. Like, this is fantastic. Reanimate, a really good reanimator card. I mean, it's 1 black mana, and you know, life is a resource, so losing life shouldn't be that big of a deal. So this just does a really, really good job with bringing back cards to your, well, creature cards to your battlefield. So it's great. Animate Dead, yeah, the wording here is a little weird, but it's just a good reanimator card. I mean, you know, why not? Necromancy, you know, it's like a cute, it's a good card. It's a good reanimator card, but if you're willing to, there are probably better cards to replace Necromancy with, but it's just been in here for so long, and I don't know, I just really love this card that I just personally like to keep it. So sometimes I do. If Meren, for instance, gets killed, for some reason I always have Necromancy in hand, so I'll let, you know, Meren go to my graveyard, which is always assigned to my opponents, so I'll be able to bring her back. So, you know, this, having an additional reanimate card like this is fine, in my opinion, at least. So now we're to the sack outlets. These are really, really, really good sack outlets. I never thought of how good it is until, well, I started using them, forcing myself to use them more. And these, man, these, like, Carrion Feeder gets out of hand. So, you know, because Carrion Feeder can sacrifice to itself, but in addition, if it sacrifices another creature, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So Carrion Feeder, you can sacrifice all the creatures you want, and you'll get +1/+1 counters, deal damage, and then if you need the additional experience counter, if you have Meren out, then you can sacrifice to itself. It's a really good automatic sack outlet. It's just a really, really good card. Altered Dementia. So, I mean, you don't really want Dredge or Mill in this deck that much. You can. However, it's not, this deck isn't built super well to work that way. However, you have Altar of Dementia, and we'll get into it later, but there's some cards that work really, really well. So, you know, inevitably you'll mill lands or artifacts or instants, sorceries, anything, you know, enchantments into your graveyard, which you won't be able to bring back with Meren. And, you know, you might have reanimator cards and stuff like that, but the main objective with this is to sacrifice big creatures, and it's also an automatic sack outlet to fill your graveyard with creatures, hopefully. Most of this deck is creatures, so you shouldn't have problems with that. And once you, it can actually be a win condition. I won a few times with this card because I'll mill a bunch of my cards into my graveyard and get a bunch of important creatures with fantastic ETB effects, and then I'll bring them all back with a win condition card that that I'll show you later. So this is actually a really good card. What I replaced it with, or what this was the replacement for, was Ashnod's Altar, which you can sacrifice a creature to add two colorless mana for, which is actually a really good sack outlet and really good ramping. But I just found that this worked out better because we have another card that does the same thing. So this isn't an automatic sack outlet, but you will have a lot of, you know, like weenie creatures, so you will be able to kill them, or if you equip this to somebody and you sacrifice it, you will be able to draw 2 cards. So this is a really, really, really good card, really powerful, and gets you a lot of cards. Viscera Seer, another just amazing sack outlet. You know, you put it out in turn 1 if you have to, and it just does work. In addition, you can scry, so you can kind of cycle through your deck to see, you know, it's just good. Like, it's what you need. Dracula's Tomb. So basically, kind of just, it's a good sack. If it's untapped, you can sacrifice a creature to add 2 black. Yeah, I know it's Phyrexian Tower, whatever. This is just a really, really good card, and I've used it many times. If I can play it out on turn 1, or turn 2, and then I can have a mana dork that I can sacrifice by turn 3, I'll bring Meren out. This is just a fantastic card, and it's definitely put work in. Another proxy, this is my only other proxy here. Phyrexian Altar, a fantastic sack outlet. This was another card that is the reason why I took Ashnod's Altar out, because you can sacrifice a creature to add 1 mana of any color. And in my opinion, that's probably even more important. So you'll be able to sacrifice a bunch of creatures to if you don't have enough mana to use a reanimator card, but you need a really good ETB card, you can sacrifice that ETB creature and then reanimate it, and then with the sacrificing, you'll be able to bring it back from the mana that this produced. So this is a really good card. No wonder it's so expensive. So yeah. So now we're getting into the creatures that die really well, that you will inevitably want to sacrifice, and you can easily bring back because it's only low mana. So Haywire Might, I don't know. I just kind of added this. It's a simple life gain, and if you need to, you can sacrifice it with only 1 green mana to exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. So it's a good enchantment and artifact removal. It's a very decent card, and so each time it dies, you gain 2 life. That's not bad. This card, it can be taken out, but it helps fill your graveyard. It's just ETB, you can sacrifice it, low cost. It's not bad. It's if you need a body blocker like this, does a good job. Steve, just a really, really good ramp card. Sacrifice to itself, an automatic sac. Not that expensive. So, it's just a good card. And if you need more mana, you can always just sacrifice it to itself and bring it back, sacrifice it, and then just ramp up. So it's a good card. Canker Bloom, a new card actually. Surprisingly good actually. Because it's only 1 mana that you have to pay to sacrifice it, and you can destroy an artifact or enchantment, but in addition, you can choose to proliferate. So let's say you're struggling to bring a bunch of creatures back. You need to bring back a really high mana creature that you put into your graveyard, and you're not that high. If you sacrifice, you get one experience token or counter. In addition, you can sacrifice to proliferate, and you'll get another additional experience counter. So you get an experience counter twice. It's surprisingly decent actually. And if you need to, you can just sacrifice it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. So it's not bad removal at all, and it's also low cost with pretty decent stats. What else? Once it enters the battlefield, you ramp, and you can sacrifice it and do it over again. It's just a good card. Spore Frog, so it's good because it's really low cost, and it's an immediate sack outlet and protects you. However, some players will play this card every single time and just avoid all damage, but personally, I don't know. I feel like that's even boring for me. I will only use it if it's life or death at this point. It's kind of like a fog. So now it's easy to bring it back, and you can immediately sacrifice it, and you can get your experience counters up really quick with this card. So that's what I mainly use it for. But it's, I don't know, just there's some times Commander games can get boring and outright not fun if you just disable all your opponents. I mean, you still want to, it's a game, you want to have fun. So the reason I put this card in, it's good. It has really good ETB effect, where you get card draw, and I guess the token, when you create it, you can sacrifice it to get an additional experience counter. The main reason is because my friend had a She-Ray deck, which is an insane reanimator deck. And unfortunately, at that time, this deck didn't have too many answers to stuff like that. But the thing I'm realizing is almost every Commander deck wants to have at least one graveyard hate card. And this is that card. When it ETBs, you can exile a target player's graveyard. So whichever graveyard you see is getting too dangerous and filled up, you will want to use this card to target that opponent. And in addition, there will be times that you want your graveyard to be filled and all your opponents to, be empty. And you'll see why. This is just a really good card, surprisingly. Yavimaya Elder, just another ramp card. So we're not really running ramps spells per se, like sorceries, like Cultivate, but we are running a bunch of these creatures because they just do a good job. That's all I can say. Caustic Caterpillar, just, you know, it's 1 green mana. You can play it really quick and you sacrifice it. In addition, if you pay the additional mana to sacrifice it, you get the experience counter and you can destroy target artifact or enchantment. So it's another good removal. Just another good removal. You can replace this card. I don't feel like it's too redundant because, well, at least you know, more often than not, you should be playing with more than 2 opponents. So you should be able to control the board really easily and handle all your opponent situations. So Mana Dorks, it's just really common Aristocrats decks. Birds of Paradise probably being the best one in this deck. Obviously, I mean, you can block a flyer. You can add mana of any color. It's one, you know, it's just a really good mana dork. Elves of Deep Shadow. This is the only mana dork that produces black mana in here. And again, your life is a resource. It deals 1 damage to you. It's not a huge deal. It's a good card. I could take it out, but whatever. It works in here. Finhorn Elves, another mana dork. Elvish Mystic, another mana dork. And Llanowar Elves. I mean, typical. So now we're getting into the answers for opponent creatures. Fleshbag Marauder. You know, a lot of times I'll play this and I'll sacrifice, because it's each player, so you have to sacrifice a creature as you own as well. If you play Fleshbag Marauder, you'll most often than not sacrifice Fleshbag Marauder to itself, unless you have a card that has a fantastic ETB that you want to bring back. But if you have over 3 experience counters, or 2 at least, and you sacrifice Fleshbag Marauder to itself, you get 3. You can bring it back on your end step and sacrifice an additional creature, or you can make opponents sacrifice additional creatures. So these cards are just really good creature answers. In addition, Platecrafter is better because it has the discard ability as well. If creatures don't, or if opponents don't have creatures, it just does additional resource denial. So really good card. Demon's Disciple, another answer, I mean, because it does creatures and planeswalkers, so it's really good. Merciless Executioner, basically the same thing as Fleshbag Marauder. So things that synergize well with creatures dying. Blood Artist, just, you know, this is good, but you have to target a player. So most often not, I mean, in 1v1, obviously really good, but in 4-player, you know, you kind of just have to, it's up to opinion at that point and seeing how everybody's board state is, but you can whittle down pretty slowly. Also another good at Sock Outlet, it sees itself die, so that's really good. Zulaport Cutthroat is really good because it's each opponent. So if you can sacrifice a bunch of creatures, and each opponent will lose 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So this is a good card. Better than Blood Artist in my opinion, but I think the art of Blood Artist is better. You know, it's like, it's good. It's a flyer, so you can swing through usually from to most opponents if they don't have reach or flyers. So it's just a good card, a good sack. It's all the 4 mana. So kind of a tutor card, but now we're getting in the pot effect almost. You sacrifice a creature and then you exploit for any card in your library. Like, really good. Just a fantastic creature overall, and I've won multiple times, and you know, like, good stats and death touch, so you don't want to mess with this thing. Then I have Birthing Pod in here. So I think I've won a few times with Birthing Pod, but this deck isn't strictly a Birthing Pod. There are definitely many abilities to, you know, go up the chain and get the big creatures that you need. So it is still a really good card, but I mean, I don't know. I haven't played it too often. I still keep it in though, because if I need to, I will play it, and it will do a really good job. Eldritch Evolution, basically the same thing, except it's 2+ or less. So Really, really good pod card. So now we're at just the good big creatures. This is just an overall good removal. I'm considering taking this out and replacing it with something. I'm not sure yet, but for now it's in here. It does a good job. You can pot into it if you have to, but there are other 5 mana cost cards that I would rather pot into than this. So Dictate of Erebos. It's just a good enchantment card. Addition has flash. It does a really good job at well, you know, you will be sacrificing a lot of creatures, so you'll be losing a lot of creatures. They'll be dying, which in addition will make opponents sacrifice their creatures. This card I took out for a while and then I put it back in because I don't know, I like it. It doesn't have to be played. It could be replaced with a lot of cards, but for now I'm keeping it in here and it's treated me well, so I'll keep it. Beast Within, just a quick little answer for something if you can't immediately react to something. I just like this card and I keep it in here, so it's in here. Body Launder does a surprisingly good job. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, it connives. So you draw a card and discard a card, and if that card that you discarded is a creature, you put a +1/+1 counter on Body Launder, and in addition, Body Launder has Death Touch. So it's just you know, it's a good card. I mean, 4 mana, you can tutor into it, you can pot into it. It does a decently good job. Maybe haven't played it as much, but still a really powerful card in this deck. So Sir Conrad the Grim, my favorite mechanic in Magic is actually mill. Yeah, I know, sorry. Sir Conrad the Grim, it's pretty chaotic. I mean, I guess straightforward, but you know, you have to be on your toes when you're playing this deck because you have to be constantly you have to be aware of everything that happens on the board because opponents will be losing and you'll be gaining life left and right. So with this card, just be aware that this card is out and always, you know, be vigilant that if somebody puts a creature in a graveyard or, you know, on your end step when you bring a creature out, this will do 1 damage to each opponent. So this is a really good card. You can pay 2 mana to mill as many cards as you want to everybody. So you'll be milling yourself in addition. Shriekmaw. Now, some people don't like this card in Meren because it effectively kills anything that doesn't have fear. So any non-black, any non-black or any non-artifact creatures you can kill. But mainly, you know, it's 5 mana cost to keep it out permanently, but evoke is 2. So if you need an answer really quick, you know, you can just play 2, and if you have Meren out, by that time, you should get an additional experience counter, and then you know, if you have enough experience counters, you can just bring it back for good, sacrifice it, do it over again. So it's just a good card. I don't know, it's done me well, pretty you know, good early on, and so I keep it in here. Ravenous Chupacabra. I don't know. I really like this card. It does a really good job. Sometimes I'll tutor into it if I have to have an answer. It's just a really good, you know, destroys any target creature an opponent controls. Just a fantastic removal card. It's a good answer to a lot of things. Now, a really fun card that to me is super satisfying is Gary. If you can first bring out or play a bunch of cards with black mana on them, or you know, anything like that, it will do work. It will whittle down people's health, and you will get a bunch of health. This is, you know, just as a note, this will put a target on your head. More often than not, it has. But by that time, you know, you're going to be so powerful and strong that it's just going to be hard to deal with you. So if I play this at that time, you shouldn't be surprised by your opponent scooping. So yeah, it's a really good black card overall. So Shieldred, a very new card. It's just a fun, cute little card that I replaced some low power card with. You know, it makes opponents sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. In addition, you can exile it to bring it back as the Saga, which does really, really good things. I haven't played it too much, but I've played it a few times, and I've definitely exiled it and gotten the Saga, which does pretty decent work. So I keep it in here. So now for the win conditions, or at least my favorite win conditions. I mean, you can win without ever playing these cards, but this is a really satisfying and fun emergency button. So remember Alter Dementia and all the mill effect cards that I had in here? So when I start doing that, my opponents will immediately know that I'm looking for this card because I do it almost every time. It says each player exiles all creature cards from his or her graveyard, then sacrifices all creature he or she controls, then puts all cards he or she exiled from their graveyard this way onto the battlefield. It's an insane card. So if somebody's destroying me, I have a bunch of creatures in my graveyard, but I have a sack outlet, especially Altered Dementia. I will sacrifice all my creatures, including Meren last on for my board into my graveyard, which will hopefully fill up my graveyard with a bunch of creatures. So this is a give or take. When you use this card, your opponents will also bring back their creatures. So that's why cards like Callous Blood Mage you should be using it to exile your opponent's graveyards, so that they can't bring their creatures back. But if you have 3 of your sack cards, Ravenous Chupacabra, stuff like that, and it comes back on the board, you will answer those. You will just destroy them. So this card is insane in my opinion. I really love this card. It's won me a few times, and definitely makes my opponents scoop. So really good card. Now, Mikaeus the Unhallowed is just a good card overall. Yeah, I know, I've been Chinese, whatever. It's a really good card, but the main reason that it's a win con is because of this infinite combo. So Mikaeus basically gives all non-human creatures you control +1/+1 and Undying. And if that creature did not have a +1/+1 counter on it, it comes back from your graveyard with a +1/+1 counter. So Walking Ballista is all about removing counters on it, and it deals 1 damage to any target. So when this dies, since it has Undying, since it's a non-human creature, and it doesn't have a +1/+1 counter on it, it comes back onto your battlefield with Mikaeus on the battlefield. So it gets a +1/+1 counter, which you can remove and deal 1 damage. What that means is effectively you can just whittle down everybody's health, for as long as you need, because this keeps coming back over and over and over and over again. In addition, if you used up all your mana to play Mikaeus, but you had Walking Ballista in your hand, you just cast it for 0, it dies, comes back, and then you do it, over and over. Addition, when you bring this back from your graveyard using Meren's ability, it will come back as a 0/0, so it dies. So if you can't bring a creature back from your graveyard because you don't have enough experience counters, but you have Walking Ballista in there, you can just allow Walking Ballista to enter the battlefield, die, you get an additional experience counter, and hopefully by then you can start bringing out better creatures. So I've played against my friend's Gishath deck, and I can't remember if I tutored or drew into this, but you just win. I mean, no matter what, this is just almost impossible to shut down. So yeah, that's my deck mainly. So for lands, I'm running 7 forests and then 8 or 9 swamps. So not super heavy on lands or basic lands. There are some really good utility lands, you know, like Phyrexian Tower, as I showed earlier. So this one, another good sack ability, you gain 1 life. I haven't really actually used it, but if I have to, I will use it. So it's a good land card. Another graveyard hate, I'm running 2 in here at least, so this is really good. You're not really playing this for the mana. I mean, it's a good addition but since it enters tapped, you mainly use it for the exile ability. Often I'll use it to target the most formidable opponent's graveyard to play, you know, Living Death. So it's a really good card. So being, you know, the villain with this deck, you are going to be the target, and Meren is incredibly terrifying. So opponents will very often do to the best of their ability to try to kill Meren. So I'm running Command Beacon. That you can sacrifice Command Beacon to bring your commander from your command zone to your hand, effectively removing all command taxes on it. So you shouldn't use this immediately if Meren dies. You should be able to use that mana, and you should. Meren is worth at all costs. But if you know Meren's died 2 or 3 times at this point, I'd say it's worth it to use it. So really, you know, honestly, a really good card. I think underrated in Commander. A lot of people, I mean, yeah, if your commander is not essential, you don't have to run it. But more often than not, your commander is pretty essential. So, you know, just why not run it? Even if your commander isn't that scary that they're going to constantly kill it, it's worth it in my opinion. So I run it. Beseju, Who Endures, a good removal channel card. Dryad Arbor is a really, really, really good land because it's 0, effectively speaking. Although you can't immediately tap it for land or to attack with it immediately. You can sacrifice it, and that will give you an experience counter since it still counts as a creature. It's a really good card. So, you know, this is it's just a good card. What can I say? Scryland, that's good. Command Tower, staple, obviously. Llanowar Wastes, I think underrated, but it's good. The Stadium, it checks for opponents. Another good commander card. Exotic Orchard, I mean, come on. Green is probably the most powerful color in Commander. More often than not, people are going to have green, and at least one of your opponents should run black. So you'll be fine in this. Even if nobody's running green or black, which is surprising, you'll be able to tap it for at least 1 colorless. So this is good. Deathcap Glade, just another really good check land. Reflecting Pool, you should be able to get you should be able to get a swamp or a forest out, or at least a dual land. So you'll be able to, you know, tap it for any of the colors they need. Shockland, really good. You can tutor, or you can search for it. So if you have one of your ramp creatures that searches for a forest, this is a forest type, so you're able to look for it, and it's untapped at a cost dual land. So this is a good card if you need to bring back to Bojuka Bog. This will be able to bring it back. It's a good card. And you can also tap the land before you bring it back, so you can have that mana floating, use it for something, and then bring this in tapped. So you're not going to be losing mana if you play it right. Twilight Mire, another good card, gets you the 3 options, the 3 maximum combinations. So this is a good job. Albeit you have to use at least a color mana for it, but you know that should not be an issue. Another good check land. Fabled Passage, it's just good. I mean, honestly, I don't really need to run it. I just like this card. I should be running Verdant Catacomb, which I might put in here, but I'm a college student and I don't have a bunch of money, so I don't care. Whatever. I have Fabled Passage for now. But yeah, no, I've won multiple times with this deck. It's very, very, very good, very powerful, very fun for me. If I play it fun, I mean, come on, don't Don't be a loser. Don't be a meanie. Everybody wants to have fun when they're playing Commander. Don't play to win, play to have fun. And that's how I try to play this Commander. I've played it, you know, this deck, it's actually not hard to master at all. Like once you learn how to drive this vehicle, you drive it well. It's just learning it takes a little bit of time. If you have a tutor card, you know, you won't have your deck list memorized, and you should slowly learn it and know, you know, how the board state is. So by the time you're comfortable with this deck, you will know what to tutor into, especially since there's so many tutor cards, and also when to tutor, when to sacrifice, when to time things, because there's a lot of intricacies with Meren that happen, and selecting, you know, if you use Living Death, you bring back all those creatures, selecting which ETBs to pop off first is another important thing. So a very, very, very versatile deck. Really, really powerful. Really not that expensive overall. Expecting around $400 to $600, I think, around here. So really, really good, honestly. And it's, I guess technically it is my first deck. So I gotta say, I mean, if this was a help to you, just, you know, you're welcome. All right, bye.